we've done
Oh, we're live. Okay,
pretty
great.
good. Yeah. Nice.
Hey guys, welcome back to the live stream with the Area 51 podcast. It's been a while. We've all been a little busy, but I think with everything that's happening, it's probably time we got back and started putting out some content. So we've got one of our regulars, Steven, back. Hey, Steven, welcome
Hey,
back.
hey, thanks for having me back on. Excited. I know it's been a crazy few months here, huh?
Oh yeah, tell me about it. And we're missing. I don't know if Brad's listening, but we're missing Brad. He's usually part of the birthright conversations. But on
Yeah. He was texting me today and I said, what are you doing? He's on a well-deserved family vacation. And so I told him, I think I'll be able to talk in a way that doesn't reflect poorly on him.
on the plus side, he's not going to say anything that's going to get me in trouble because I'm pretty sure
That's
folks
right.
listening to
That's
the
right.
last stream. Yeah,
Yeah.
I went undercover for a bit after that last stream. So, all right, guys, I think we've got a bunch of things to talk about. Steven, I think something that's on everyone's radar, uh, and the topic that almost every immigrant's kind of thinking about is birthright citizenship. I know we had some updates the last couple of weeks regarding the Supreme Court ruling. Let's start talking about that. So, according to the Supreme Court now, the lower court, the federal judges are not allowed to block injunctions anymore on executive orders. Is that right?
Sort of. Really, so when you take a case up to appeal and up to the Supreme Court, you have certain questions that are presented.
Right.
And you have multiple ways you can do an appeal, all through the Court of Appeals up to the Supreme Court. So you have district courts; those are the lowest level. I know you're up in the Boston area, so you've got the District of Massachusetts. I'm in
Yep.
Houston. We have the Southern District of Texas. There's all these different district courts. They're the lowest level. That's where every federal lawsuit starts. All right, for the
Okay.
most part, is in a district court. Then, if some side doesn't like it, they appeal to the circuit court, and there's 9 circuits.
Okay.
Is it 9 or 10 or 13? Excuse me, 13 circuits that are out there. They're kind of regional, right?
Okay.
And then after that, you can petition for review by the Supreme Court. Now, again, when you have these things, you have kind of what I'll call regular appeals. That means the case is done, somebody's not happy, they're going to appeal and make its way up. And then you have what are called interlocutory appeals. And that's when you have initial type orders in the middle of the case. So here in this case, you had an injunction. An injunction is a preliminary injunction is a very early matter in the case, or a temporary restraining order telling one of the parties you can't do this. Okay. And in this case, Casa v. Trump, you had a injunction saying you can't enforce the executive order on birthright citizenship. And so the government appealed that, but they didn't appeal the merits on the legality of
Gotcha. Okay.
birthright citizenship. What they appealed is this thing that you see on the news. And if you follow Stephen Miller and you follow some people on social media that talk about this, is this idea of nationwide injunctions.
Yep.
And so what you have is, in this case, and it's happened in plenty of others, and guess what? It happened under the Biden administration with student loans and vaccine mandates and other things that happened during Obama, Trump won, that judges in these lower district courts would issue and say, we are going to enjoin this, stop it nationwide while we go about the case.
Gotcha.
Even though they're only one district court. And there's a lot of debate on whether that's a power district court judges have or not. Now the Supreme Court's ruled on that. That's what this case, I jokingly talked about it on my firm's YouTube when we did it last Friday, that you could have called this the red light camera policy case. And it has the same effect because the question presented to the Supreme Court, and the vast majority of the 119 pages between the main opinion and the concurrence and the dissents, was about the legality of nationwide injunctions, not about the merit.
Birthright.
Some of the dissent talked about birthright citizenship, but
Gotcha.
the opinion has nothing to do with birthright citizenship other than that's the vehicle that it brought to. But they didn't talk about the legality, say this is right, wrong, or indifferent.
Gotcha. You said federal courts. What about a circuit court? Can a circuit court have the power to do a nationwide injunction?
So under this, I would think that circuit courts would be limited to just their circuit.
Okay.
You know, that if because you know they don't issue injunctions typically at the circuit court, it's mostly done at the district court. But if they, let's say, the merits of the birthright citizenship case, you know, in California gets brought up, and the Ninth Circuit says, yeah, this is garbage, we're not allowing this to go forward, it would probably be, you know, unlawful in the Ninth Circuit. Now,
understood. Okay.
That's where everybody's confused. Is like, do I need to move out to California? Do I, you know, and all that? But couple of talking points here. Number one, before lunch that day, the lawsuit that was really the primary lawsuit for the Supreme Court case, Casa v. Trump, had already amended their lawsuit to raise a class allegation. Why? In the Supreme Court's decision, what this all came down to is there adequate relief for the parties, and are they going beyond that with these nationwide injunctions? And what they talked about is that, hey, the effect of nationwide relief might be there when we talk about class action cases. It might be there in certain Administrative Procedure Act cases, which is what Brad and I bring a lot of, where a judge can set aside a rule.
Yep.
And then there might be a need for nationwide relief when you have state litigants, because they talked about the idea that at the end of the day, you can't have, well, you're a citizen in California, you're not a citizen in Texas.
Right.
That's not how certain things work. And so we're kind of back at the beginning of this lawsuit. The Supreme Court and the government said, hey, we're going to pause this for 30 days so case can be brought, fixed up, let things go through. And, you know, the case out in Maryland amended their complaint again before lunch. I was working from home that morning. My son had a doctor's appointment. So before I even left to get into the office, they had already amended their lawsuit to raise class allegations, filed a new motion for a temporary restraining order and preliminary injunction for the class. And I expect that here in the next couple of weeks, there's going to be a decision on that. And Rahul, I just want to read, and I hate reading on a podcast. Here is how they defined the class. It is all children who have been born or will be born in the United States on or after February 19th, 2025, who are designated by Executive Order 14160 to be ineligible for birthright citizenship, and their parents. So what does that mean?
Everybody. Right? Everybody was born.
If they get class certification,
oh wow, okay,
it'll essentially be everybody. And I think, look, if that happens, the government's going to appeal class certification and try to fight that part out. And it's going to be a long battle where I don't think we see the negative effect of this for quite some time.
Okay. Why did they leave that open? Why did they say that if folks are filing a class action, they've still got a way to kind of fight this? Just curious.
You always could, that was always, again, this is a very scholarly debate in the legal field for years about these nationwide injunctions. And that, if I go to sue the government because, Donald Trump decides I don't like people with short hair, all right, I sue, am I really bringing it for everybody or for just me? And that's what the courts have to decide. Now, if I allege a class and say, hey, the whole class of people with short hair, right, are bringing this case, That's different. So it's really about adequacy of relief, and can one judge, when they're only presented with one plaintiff or a handful of plaintiffs, and look, it cuts both ways. Texas, the state of Texas did this a lot during the Biden administration. They would file, lawsuits in the Northern District of Texas, Amarillo Division, way up in the panhandle of Texas, where there's one judge. He was a Trump-appointed judge. They knew who they were getting, and challenged, Biden policies. And, the left does it too. They go out onto the West Coast, East Coast, and they find favorable courts. It's a lot of gamesmanship. And then if you get a nationwide injunction, it slows everything down. And then the government's position is, you're a president for 4 years, right? You only have so much time. And so, again, I think long term, I would be shocked if it's anything worse than a 7-2 opinion from the Supreme Court in favor of birthright citizenship. It's a long tradition that we have. There's actually a good article.
Wait, you said 7-2 for birthright citizenship?
Yeah, like in favor of it.
Oh, wow. So
I would be surprised if it's any worse than 7-2, 6-3.
So you're saying even the conservatives could put potential. Oh.
Yeah, I think they're going to go in favor of it. And here's why. You go look at the history of this.
Yep.
And there's an interesting article that was done. Judge James Ho up on the Fifth Circuit is very conservative. Okay, he's kind of a Clarence Thomas type judge, very well respected as a judge, but also very conservative. And in 2006, is that what it is? He wrote a white paper talking about birthright citizenship and how our current interpretation, from the history of it going back to like Old England, all the way up to now, supports the idea of birthright citizenship. And then what he kind of talked to is specifically the idea of illegal immigrants, because that's the idea here, is that you have certain people who are not subject to the jurisdiction thereof, right? They're born here. Are they subject to the jurisdiction thereof? And this is what he said, and I put this up on Twitter the other day. Nor is being subject to the jurisdiction of the United States limited to those who always have complied with U.S. law. Criminals cannot immunize themselves from prosecution by violating Title 18. Likewise, aliens cannot immunize themselves from U.S. law by entering our country in violation of Title 8. Indeed, illegal aliens are such because they are subject to U.S. law. And basically, to put that
so it's like the Uno reverse, right?
Yeah, like basically, I can't sit there and say, okay, you're an immigrant subject to removability under Title 8, but you're also not subject to the jurisdiction of our laws. Typically we view the two categories who aren't subject to jurisdiction are, what are they called? Diplomats.
Diplomats, yeah.
You can't give a DUI to a diplomat. You can't pull them over and charge them.
What's it? The blue passport, right? What's it? That's the diplomatic immunity, right?
Yeah, they have diplomatic immunity, basically. And then, commonly understood that if we are invaded by a military force that has children, those children are not subject to birthright citizenship. And so I know everybody's panicked because, like, I have a baby due in August. I have a baby due, What are we going to do? And my advice right now is to sit tight. And I know that sounds horrible. I think in the next 2 weeks, we're going to see a lot of movement on these cases that are being fought by groups that all they do is raise constitutional challenges every day. The ACLU, CASA, immigrants' rights groups, that I think we're going to see something because, I have yet to see a judge be like, maybe the government's got a point.
Because I did see one place that July 1st was actually supposed to be the date where the government was actually supposed to put forward their proposal on how to manage birthright citizenship. I was reading a bunch of articles I got to prep for this chat. I saw that I couldn't find any such proposals that have been submitted.
No, they basically, with the original injunction, stopped putting any policies together. The Supreme Court said, look, we all agree that we're not going to enforce the executive order for 30 days,
right?
But the government can move forward with putting forward policies. The one thing, Brad Mattis and I talked about when we talked about this, like, we started getting calls right away. And our advice is to, if you've had a child or going to have a child here in the next couple of weeks, apply for the passport as soon as possible, because
they won't retroactively go back.
Yeah, get it. And then number two, a denial of passport is a wholly different challenge than these class action cases. So let's say these class action cases are completely unsuccessful. The judges all say, no. We have no concept of birthright citizenship. You have a different challenge, when you have your passport denied. So we're going to keep an eye on it probably here in the next 2 weeks, maybe see if we need to take action. But, I get that it's stressful. I just had another baby.
I know. Yeah. I forgot about that. Timing's pretty.
Right. Like my wife and I were talking, funny story where we were actually, on the opposite end of changes in immigration policy. We had been applying or trying to apply for years for Italian citizenship through my great grandmother, and like Italy just kind of announced like a rule change that won't allow it. And actually it was partially delayed because
Steven,
right,
you're going through your own citizenship battles.
I know, man. So we had joked because we had always joked like, okay, if we can get Italian citizenship, that's kind of like if America goes to hell, like that's our back back we'll go to Italy. But like now we're like, well, shoot, like with everything going around, like we need to go get my daughter a passport anyway.
And
so I encourage parents to do it anyway. It's like one universally accepted documentation.
So the 30-day period ends on July 26th, right?
I think it's 27th, somewhere around there.
27th. Yeah, 26, 27. I actually was counting it the other day. So if you're in one of the 28 states that hasn't filed a suit, does that mean if you have a kid born on July 28th, 27th, 28th, you're not going to get citizenship, or can they just sit tight on this right now?
I think you can sit tight for right now. And again, we're going to kind of reevaluate here in a couple of weeks if we need to as these cases develop. But like two things. One, you have kind of two major lawsuits going on. You have up in, I think it's Massachusetts, actually, you have the one with the 28 states that have, signed on to a lawsuit.
I think New Hampshire had one too, right?
Yeah. And then you have this CASA case, which is out in Maryland. That's the class action that, like, that's no states involved, but that would kind of define everybody. And remember, the Supreme Court did kind of mention that you might need nationwide relief when you have state litigants. Again, you can't have a situation, well, this baby's born in Massachusetts, they're a citizen, but the moment they move to Texas, they're not. Like, that's not how the system works.
That's chaos. That's chaos.
Yeah, eventually this is going to turn into a nationwide thing. It's just kind of figuring out what's the procedure the Supreme Court's going to be okay with.
So the Supreme Court ruling that when they spoke about the nationwide injunction, there was no text in it whatsoever about the 28 states that haven't filed for it. Because there's some news articles that I just said that now that this is passed, the Supreme Court dictated that the 28 states can proceed with removing birthright citizenship. So nothing of that sort was.
Well, first off, states have no role in citizenship. Like, at all.
Yeah.
And like, second off, I guess if you really want to take a very strict view and not go beyond, kind of the way the Supreme Court said, no, you can only do it for parties. Maybe you can end up in a situation where only those as applied to the people in those 28 states. But again, the Supreme Court did mention that it might be necessary when you have state litigants. I was texting with two guys I went to law school with. Neither of them do immigration. One of them does employment law. One of them does criminal law. So he gets into immigration. my employment law buddy like said, I finally got to read it. It's not as crazy as I thought.
Okay.
Like things are just different. They're not gone. And it didn't talk about this. I said, yeah, I thought the state litigants thing. He said, I never even thought about that. So like this is, and he's at a pretty good sized firm.
Okay.
And
well, that's positive. That's positive.
Yeah, I guess my wife texted me. She hears me. She's mad at USCIS because we were waiting forever. My great grandmother's non-existence of naturalization certificate. We waited about a year. So,
well,
for that. So
you can let her know by the time I get my citizenship, I'll probably be a great grandfather myself.
Tell him I said I'm still mad we didn't sue USCIS for our own damn delay case. But
Steven, it's crazy. The people I know who are actively potentially looking at traveling to other states to give birth because they follow the cusp of that thing. It's insane. I'm like, and I feel so bad because this is not the time. This should be the least of your worries, right?
No, I mean, I remember when this first came out, there were doctors who were being asked about pregnancies.
I remember that. Yeah.
And now people are talking about moving, and again, just had another baby. Number 4, I got twins, so I cheated. I know, like this is stressful, especially like first time parents. Like, it's stressful to begin with, and now you have this like, oh, I thought my kid was going to be a citizen, and this is how life was going to be. And now you're like, what is it going to be like? Yeah. And again, I think there are some very good groups litigating this, like better than me, at nationwide constitutional litigation. And I think they're going to, I still think the end of the day, they're going to have positive results.
Yep.
And again, Brad and I are going to be looking at it here in a couple weeks, after I get back from some hearings in DC about, do we need to get involved? Are things trending in a way where, the backlog community, because, he and I were talking, the backlog community, especially, I think is very unique from a lot of different immigrant communities in that, but for these arbitrary caps, I mean, you'd probably be a citizen by now, right? Most of the
10 years in now.
Yeah, the 2012 priority dates, 2013 priority dates, 2014 priority dates, would be citizens or at least be eligible by now. And they're clearly domiciled here. You're trying to stay here as best you can. So we're looking at it. I don't want to scare people. I'm hoping we're not necessary. I truly do. But I get it.
Kind of like the Sevis scenario you guys would, at that point.
Yeah. Yeah, we're going to be keeping an eye on it. That's for sure. But I'm hoping we're not necessary. That's okay. For dang sure. Not just because I think it's going to work. With what folks are doing, it's just a matter of time.
Well, good to hear, because one of the reasons I set this up is like just within the community groups or like just the chat on Twitter or like local immigrant groups, there's just like widespread chaos, right?
Oh yeah,
especially amongst new parents and stuff. And July, that whole July 27th, August, September timeframe when people expecting babies, that's like in the unknown. They're like, what do we do? So it's just that would be good to like just hear from someone like yourself to like,
and
is there a reason for panic or not? So
I called Brad and I chatted right after, and he's like, okay. And then I got emails, and like I emailed his office because I knew he was traveling, and I was like, hey guys, like we're gonna coordinate something. And
yep.
People are calling. I get it. It's stressful. Like again, having a new baby is stressful. Like whether it's a first time parent or a fourth kid or whatever, it's stressful. And now, like, the least you should have to worry about is what's like, what's going to happen, right? Because going through all these ridiculous questions. I remember you and I talked about like the first time, what is the kid's immigration status? Like, there's no, they're not lawfully admitted. There's no CBP officer there. So we're going to see what their policies are. Number one, are they going to make this nobody has birthright citizenship unless you have citizen parents? Are they going to cut it back to some, not all? How are they going to handle if this goes the worst case scenario, the immigration side? We're going to see things come out.
I'll tell you one thing: if they keep it only blue states, there's going to be a mass exodus of
Oh,
immigrants
it
leaving the
would
red states
be
and moving. Like Texas would be,
it would be
would be
awful. And
wiped
I mean,
out.
you think like, I mean, I've got neighbors that have been lawful permanent residents like before we moved in here to this house 10 years ago, and they just like, I don't want to become a citizen. I don't want to apply for my citizenship. And like, how would that impact them if they had kids? Like, there's a lot of nuance to this besides illegal immigrants, you know, and all that. And, you know, again.
So does a birth certificate, this was a question someone actually asked, right? What if the kid's born they move to another place and the kid's born in a state that's red or versus blue, that birth certificate, that would be the only determining factor, right? So
yeah, like, and that's, you know, I think it would, you know, if it goes to that extreme, and I just don't think it will. I don't think we're going to end up in a situation where, you know, Maryland, you're a citizen, Texas, you're not, and two children born on July 30th have two different immigration statuses. I just don't think that's going to
happen. 11:59 versus 12 o'clock for twins or something. One's a citizen.
You know, I remember when we had like my first kid, and my wife was in labor forever, and it's like 11 o'clock, you know, 11:50, and the doctor's like, all right, we're gonna go do surgery now, and it's like, you know, right before midnight. Like, what, you know, how many people? You know, so I think we're going to see something, and it's going to be somewhat nationwide. It's just a matter of time and how it structures.
Yep. I think on that note, Stephen, we'll segue into the next thing we wanted to talk about, because at this point, all either of us can do is probably just speculate on where the ball's going to land. So, for folks tuning in, it's we'll keeping an eye on this. I'm sure it's just like you guys, and then probably have Stephen back once something more concrete is there. But for now, if you have kids, going to have kids in the next couple of weeks, don't stress out about this. I know it's easier said than done, but try not to stress out about this. There's nothing concrete going on right now at this moment, and I think you guys should be fine. Maybe someone 6 months down the lane, by then we'd have more clarity, but up until then, I think potentially you guys don't have anything to worry about.
Agree. And I know my firm, like I said, we're keeping an eye on it. Brad Bannis has been on here plenty of times. He's keeping an eye on it, you know, and we're going to kind of put stuff out as best we can as things develop. I check, you know, the two lawsuits daily to see what's going on in them, to, you know, because I want to know so we can provide that information to people.
Yep. Stephen's also part of the Air Friend community group, so you know he keeps giving us insights on that group. He also runs his own Telegram group as part of the Reddy Newman Brown firm. So you know, consider joining either one of these groups, and you're more than you know, you can stay in touch and see what's happening. The next one that I have on the list, Stephen, probably won't talk too much about it, but there's this ruling where now you're allowed to be. Not allowed. You're going to be deported to a country that's not your country of origin. And that's insane if that is the case. I read it and I was like, I can't believe this.
The Supreme Court, you know, had a case, again, fast-tracked about third country deportations. It came out June 23rd.
So it's an actual thing.
DVD et al. This is one of those, you know, interlocutory appeals. It was on the emergency docket, and so it is a much shorter opinion. It's like 19 pages, and it does. It's not something we mostly see this when we have countries that people are from that they won't allow repatriate, allowing them to take back their own people. There are certain countries where they're just like, no, we're not going to be in agreement to, you know, take deported individuals from so-and-so country. And so the vast majority of this opinion, interestingly, again, it's 19 pages, and like, it's all dissent, right? Like one paragraph. It was an application for stay. They granted the stay pending the disposition of the appeal. So there's an appeal pending. The government moved for a stay of the district court's order. The district court said nope. The circuit court said nope, and the Supreme Court said, yeah, we're going to stay it, meaning we're going to put a timeout on the district court's order until this goes through. And again, this is 19 pages. There is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, like a dozen lines of text that give like, here's what happened. And so we're going to grant the stay. And then the rest of the 18 and a half pages is the dissent from Sotomayor. So I don't think this is going to be a widespread practice.
So wait, they granted a stay on the federal court's appeal?
Yeah, and I think I don't understand how they got there, because usually when you have to request a stay, you have to show how you're going to be harmed by the court's order upon appeal. I don't know how the government's harmed by not deporting people to third countries. I think this one, if I remember right, was if I remember right, I think it was Sudan.
Yeah, that's one of the countries where they moved it to.
Yeah, and there was they had protections under CAT, which is the Convention Against Torture. They weren't supposed to be sent to certain countries. So, for example, if I was Venezuelan and the Venezuelan government, took part in torture, and I was going to be subject to torture, and I was deported, I could get a withholding of removal to Venezuela, meaning I can't be deported to Venezuela. And so, well, where do you go? You got to go somewhere else. And usually it's not somewhere crazy like the Sudan or El Salvador or, Cuba or whatever. But the government now, I guess, is being a little weird. Again, I don't think this is a big one for the.
Okay, so if it's for a country that does not have any issues repatriating, criminals,
I think India is good.
So for those countries, you still get deported back to that country for it.
That's how it's supposed to work. You're supposed to be sent back to your home country.
Okay, the way I read it, I was like, okay, so if someone commits a crime, now they're just going to deport you to the closest country out of the.
And remember, this is still being litigated, right? They're allowed to enforce their policy until, and I think there was already a new order that came out in that litigation.
Okay.
So, crazy.
And wasn't the Lake and Riley Act also said that if someone does not repatriate folks who are coming back, you're allowed to stop issuing visas to that country?
Yeah, and we haven't seen that yet either. Yep. States could sue to the Department of State to get them to stop issuing
visas. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So that's not as much up on the priority list, because
not yet.
Because when I saw this one, I was like, for a sec, I was like, whoa.
It's scary, right? Like, you go back
it is.
January when they sent those individuals to, El Salvador in the middle of the night against a judge's order. And, just today, the one individual at the forefront of that litigation put together a sworn statement about his time there. And it's damn scary. Like, you read through what he said happened to him, and it's out of a horrible movie. It's he lost 30 pounds in 2 weeks. He was beaten. He was made to kneel for hours on end, all these things. Oh my God. And, you read it and it's like, how are we as a country?
Yeah.
Even if the government's right and he's a bad guy, he's a gang member. All right. Let's take the government and say that. Why are we sending them to be tortured? In my opinion, we're better than that.
Absolutely.
And from the get-go, look, gang members, violent criminals, I get it. You want to deport violent criminals, I get it. We have procedures in place though, and they need to be followed. And I don't think we should be sending people to get tortured. We're better than that as a country.
Absolutely. Okay. That's good to know. Thanks for shedding light on that.
Yeah.
The topic that I wanted to talk to you the most about after birthright citizenship was the NTA, the notice to appear for the H-1B proceedings. Can you give us a quick introduction to what an NTA is so that
Yeah.
folks tuning in knows what it is?
Yeah, so an NTA is a notice to appear. This is a formal notice for the government saying they are starting removal proceedings, deportation proceedings, and they allege what has happened to get you there and what the charge is. So they're going to go through, what has happened in your immigration journey to get you there, and then there's going to be a charge that says, pursuant to INA, you are subject to removal. You are to appear before Judge so-and-so at this time, at this location. And just let me kind of give some background here. First off, I'm going to call them judges because under the INA, they are called immigration judges. They are not federal court black robe judges that are appointed by the president, nominated by the president and confirmed by the Senate. These are senior Department of Justice employees that take on the job of immigration judge, and they are DOJ.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Immigration judges. So, you go to the Southern District of Texas, the District of Massachusetts, the Northern District of California, Southern District of Florida. Those are Article 3 judges, right? They have been confirmed by the Senate. Their, powers are in Article 3 of the United States Constitution and the Judiciary Act.
And they sit at the circuit court, right?
Well, they said so. You have district courts, then circuit courts, and then the Supreme Court. When you have immigration judges, they are called immigration judges. But again, they are just Department of Justice government employees that they're like administrative judges, if you think about it that way. They are
would be lawyers. They would have a degree in law, right? Are you serious?
Not always.
Oh my God.
But I think for the most part, yes, not always though. But they
so how they rule if they don't know the law?
Well, that is something the removal bar I know is very interested in. They also, because of how this is, you get a lot of issues that are presented to the Attorney General, who says this is how we're going to handle these things, and what are called precedential decisions that kind of give them instructions. Again, I think most are probably lawyers. I just don't know if being a lawyer is a requirement. I haven't ever looked to apply.
So if I worked at the Department of Justice, eventually I could be an immigration judge.
And again, I think most of them are lawyers. I'm not sure if you have to be.
That's cool. Thanks,
which is cool.
You're giving me an alternate career path. I'm gonna start looking at
so I'm looking here at their. It's not found. They had a application website.
Yeah, please forward.
Yeah, so I was looking to see if they had to, and then that website is no longer found. So
Rawlman immigration judge. I like the sound of that.
Yeah. So again, I imagine. Oh, okay. Again, so the Google's thing here tells me they have to have experience as an attorney. But
okay.
That's better. I feel better now.
Yeah, me too.
Again, I don't do, removal proceedings. And so, it's not funny. So we saw last week, somebody reached out to our firm about receiving a notice to appear. They're on H-1B, and I'll talk about that for a minute. We were going to go live. And, what I'm always cautious about is we're not just fear mongering. One, we have confirmed information. I'm not just going off of a rumor that we heard. We verified it. We made sure this person actually had a case in the, system. We looked it up. And then I was like, how do we discuss this in a way that doesn't, just bring fear? And, because obviously, look, when we talk about certain things, if I were to bring fear in a way to drive business, that's good for me. But we don't do removal proceedings at all. Yeah. I'm going to be very matter of fact. I've learned more about removal in the last week looking this up. But I get it. People think like, hey, that's an immigration attorney. He's just out for himself. Like, totally get that. I feel the same way when like my daughter went to the dentist and they're like, you need this done for your 5. Like, okay, dude, you have a boat payment due. Like, I get it. I get it. So this individual had reached out to us, and since then we got 2 more that were sent to us last.
Oh, you have 3 now. Okay.
Yeah, so we have 3 now, and again, I've looked at them myself. Looked them up into what's called EOR, the Executive Office of Immigration, Executive Office for Immigration Review, which is basically deportation proceedings, to make sure that they were valid and not fake. And we talked with them a little bit and then gave them some advice, which I'll talk about here in a little bit. All 3 of them, I think, are defective because all 3 of them are lawfully in the United States and maintaining their status. What they all 3 did, all 3 of the cases went through their history, and at some point recently left their company. The company withdrew their H-1B as they're supposed to. It gets, when USCIS processes a withdrawal, they call it a revocation. Totally fine. Yep. Never been an issue. And then now they're saying, oh, you're out of status. You're unlawfully present. And that's totally not the case. When you go into, and we'll talk about the 60-day grace period, when you go into the 60-day grace period, 1, you have to have a valid I-94.
Yep.
2, you have the 60 days, and we'll talk about what that is and what that isn't in a minute. Right. And 3, all 3 of these had done something during that 60 days. 1 had a pending adjustment of status. 1 had applied for a change of status to H-4. 1 had applied for a new employer, applied for H-1B transfer. And so
they were not out of status.
Not out of status. And I ultimately think these NTAs are going to be terminated, dismissed, whatever they're going to call them. I don't think these individuals are going to get removed. My advice to them has been to get a attorney in that area that does removal proceedings, so they can, call up the, government attorney and be like, what the hell?
So they can use an attorney to kind of pause.
Yeah, you do have right to. Okay. So yes, you do have a right to an attorney in removal proceedings. You do not have. You have the right to get an attorney. You don't have a right to an attorney. What I mean by that is, in a criminal case, you can have.
Okay.
Yeah, you can have a court-appointed attorney. I don't think you're entitled to one in removal proceedings.
Gotcha.
And so but you can hire one. I recommend getting someone who knows that area, very well.
So let me get this straight, Stephen. These are 3 individuals who are on potentially H-1B. Mm-hmm. They got laid off, maybe. Yep. They've not done anything wrong. Nope. They're still within the 60-day grace period. They filed an adjustment of status to another valid visa type, and they still got an NTA stating that their status is revoked.
Yeah, and I think what has happened, our theory is that whatever AI or software or whatever saw the term revoked, right? The company
mailed in withdrawal,
and then it says, oh, Rahul's got a revoked H-1B, so he has nothing pending, and they didn't go the next step of looking at it because there's a push to get numbers up, right? They want to get a million NTAs and push these numbers, and
that's crazy.
I don't think, looking at it, I saw what the statute they cited, INA 237A1, which said that you're either violating the INA or had a visa revoked, and when it says visa there, it talks about the visa in your passport revoked by Department of State. None of them had that according to the facts that they were given. And again, I think they're defective. I think they'll be terminated, but it's scary, right? Because
absolutely.
Now, you've just been laid off from your job, and now you have to go hire an attorney to help you out in a frivolous removal proceeding. And it's just ridiculous, I think.
Stephen, we had spoken about this a few weeks ago, or maybe if it was a few months ago, I think. remember when USCIS had archived its what to do when you're facing unemployment page? It's not an active page anymore, right? And one of the options they had listed was uh, transfer your visa status to another dependent visa, like a B1, B2, or an H4. Do you think that has something to do with this? Because
so let's kind of talk through this. So the 60-day grace period, I like to say, was a 2017 regulation that came out.
Right.
And it allows it basically, when you have a valid I-94, remember it's 60 days, but if your I-94 expires tomorrow, you don't get an extra 60 days. It only would go till tomorrow.
Right.
So if your I-94 is valid, you are deemed essentially to be maintaining status during that 60 days, and you can leave the country, change your employer, file for your green card if you're eligible, or seek another non-immigrant status. Now, it is discretionary. They don't have to grant it, but it still requires a decision. They would have to, you apply for your H-1B transfer. They would have to say, no, we're not giving you the 60-day grace period because of these reasons. I have almost always gotten the 60-day grace period approved outside of like, we were really kind of trying to spread it out as far as we could in some weird cases.
Oh, you need to apply for the 60-day grace period? I thought
they will tell you every attorney, I think, has different views, even within our office. Emily Newman in our office has never needed to unless there's an RFE, and it works almost all the time. For me, I like put on my cover letter saying like, this is individuals in their 60-day grace period and they're eligible for it because da-da-da-da-da.
It's a petition that you actively file when someone's
I file it as part of my, like, if I do an H-1B
change of
transfer, I would put it in my attorney cover letter. Like I said, my boss Emily Newman, she thinks I'm crazy for doing it. Many attorneys I think differ. You don't have there's not like a form for it. I requested at the get-go most of the time, but when they archived that website, this website went through all these, and it's still there. It just says, hey, this is archived.
Yeah, it's archived, yeah.
Went through all of what is the 60-day grace period? What can you do? What is the...
What's a super useful thing I found when it came out?
I loved it. I mean, what's the compelling circumstances, EAD?
Because it came in, if you remember, it was peak of layoff season, the tech layoffs. So it came at the right time. And then I was super sad to see it go because I thought it was... nice of USCIS to actually, take that step and just let folks know what to do.
Do you know how, instead of somebody feeling like, oh, I need to go consult with an attorney, they could like go pull up here, but like, okay, here's all my options.
Here's my options. Yep. And I used to share that with people quite a lot when they ask me what to do. I'm like, you know what? There's this awesome link at the USCIS website. Now, because it's archived, I hesitate to do it because I don't know if it's active or not. And now with this NTA stuff, I'm even more reluctant.
So the 60-day grace period under 8 CFR 214.1 L2 is still there. That is still a regulation. One of the big things that this website update did was that B visa, kind of rule where it said, hey, if you get laid off on an HTNOL, you can change your status to a B visa and keep searching for jobs. And then if you get a job, change your status back. And they said, we view job searches as part of the B visa world. Okay. I kept waiting for the Trump administration to like get rid of that because that was just policy, right? So I don't know if they've archived that because they want to like republish something, but the 60-day grace period is still there. We're still using some of the aspects of that website, in practice, because in theory, even if they get rid of the B visa stuff tomorrow, anything that I filed today, it was still a good faith petition. And if they deny it, fine. But I was in a period, my client's in a period of authorized stay because of the pending, haze. And so, we've seen these three NTAs telling them to go to immigration court and all that. And I imagine I want to, our firm, I wanted to do this and bring this up in a way so people know. So that way, if they do face a layoff, they maybe act quicker instead of waiting
Yeah.
for 60 days to do something. Because I think it's helpful if you get put in removal proceedings, like, I filed something. Like, pound sand. Like, I'm in a period of authorized stay, authorized by the Attorney General.
And I also think, based on what you said, probably now using H4 as opposed to B1, B2 is probably a better.
Yeah, I think maybe not looking at the B2 or at least being more cautious and knowing what's going on. I think I've already pushed these NTAs up to multiple folks that I know in organizations. Our firm's going to work on kind of a letter writing campaign for people to reach out to congressional representatives and all that.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
We're going to do something. I think Emily's putting something together next week on that, because there needs to be some oversight. Because look, if they want to use removal proceedings, that's the decision the government wants to make. I don't have to agree with it. But like, if you're going to do it, follow the rules. And this 60-day grace period is there. I know that it's discretionary, but they can't just be like, we're going to throw you into removal proceedings. There has to be a decision.
Yeah.
Right. And, again, getting rid of people doing the right things is not what I think anybody in Congress wants done.
Yeah.
It's
but I really like the fact that you guys are putting together a campaign to reach out to congressional people. I think it's pretty cool. I think
but we've done it before with other things. I don't, I'll say this.
I remember Emily's I think she had a template on her website.
She did. She's done a whole bunch before on like backlog stuff, other things. I always tell people, I don't know how effective it is, but I also know that it's not going to hurt anything, and it can only make it better. If just north of where I live, I've had meetings with Congressman Luttrell. He's a staunch Republican, but also very pro legal immigrant.
Nice.
And who knows who you get in touch with that might be like, well, this is garbage, and we're going to start asking questions. It's worth sending those letters anytime you're calling. The worst thing you're going to do is waste your time putting it in, sending that email, the 42-cent stamp. That's kind of your worst case scenario, is you spent time and nothing happens. But I think letter writing campaigns are important and make your
absolutely. Let us know how Area 51.
Once we get something, I'll connect with you and we can.
I think this is pretty cool. I think it's a good initiative, and more people know about it. I think it's awesome.
Because again, these are defective NTAs, and they're not anybody. Again, I looked through it and I kept trying to find, like, what am I missing? Like, why is this person being removed? And I, redacted it and sent it to a few people. Like, what am I missing? And they're like,
right. I mean, so to sum it up for folks, it's if you get one of these NTAs, so you don't panic. I think based on what Steven just said, it's reach out to someone up in your neck of woods who knows, who has some experience with removal proceedings, and I think they'll probably be able to help you. Guide you through this.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I always tell people. I have some good friends that do removal proceedings, and it's like another language to me, just like sometimes the non-immigrant visas are to them. And so there are people here in Houston that I send all of my removal proceedings to, and he sends me business cases, and it's great. Because I would rather you get someone who's competent than me being like, okay, let me go figure it out here before you get sent to Sudan, right?
It's good. I mean, it's one of the things I've always liked about Steven, folks. They're like, these guys, I mean, Steven's one of those folks who actually, it's not just, you've talked about lawyers drumming up business, right? Like, one thing that I've noticed whenever I've spoken to you is like, you're super comfortable telling folks that you don't know something or that's not your expertise, right? And that's something that I have a lot of respect for you. Like, recently I was talking to Danielle Goldman from the Bill Foundation. She said something in my head when I told her, I was thinking of you, Brad, John. It's like you folks are very comfortable owning up and saying that it's not your field of expertise.
Yeah. And, I just think with immigration, there's so many different ways things can go wrong that I'd rather, if I don't know it or somebody in my office doesn't know it, I'd rather you get to the right person than just me figure it out. We're talking about your life, your kid's life, whatever, I'm always happy to learn new things and work with people. And, I've consulted on criminal cases from, the immigration context and like backseat on them. But like, I'm not going to go represent someone in a DUI case. But I'll give some tips to their lawyer, or if they're doing, I consulted on a criminal matter for a company and talked to their lawyer about some background and all that. But I'm sure as hell not going to try criminal.
Yeah, I think it was you, right? You used a school term. You call it crimigration.
Crimigration.
I thought it was a cool term.
Yeah, immigration. But, again, so look, if you get an NTA, it'll tell you where you have to go. Find a lawyer in that area, or if you talk to them, like ask them their experience, in that area. I know people in Houston that go up to Dallas, out to San Antonio regularly. Just make sure they kind of know, because so many times that court has different ways to do things, or maybe they know the prosecutors and can be like, call them up and be like, guys, like, what are we doing here?
Okay.
And so I think that's, that's important to get somebody local rather than flying someone from California out to Massachusetts who, unless they're really damn good, because if they are, like, it might be worth it, but try to find someone, I think, local on it.
Fair. Last thing on the agenda today, Stephen, is also a lot of folks have messaged questions about EB-1, and those were not potentially things we wanted to talk about because Stephen, I'm not sure if I'm not sure if you're. Oh yeah, before I jump to the students, I'll take a question. There's a lot of what's it called? Intent to revoke. What's it called? Notice of intent to revoke (NOIRs) being passed around for folks who've won those Einstein visas, EB-1 categories, saying that they've not done it in a legitimate way, potentially scammed their way through. Has that come onto your guys' radar yet?
Yeah, it is something we've seen, not from our cases, thank God. But there are companies out there, and we have someone in our office that like all he does is EB-1A, and
you guys do EB-1s too? I didn't know that.
We do. We have an attorney in our office that. Okay. That's all. I guess two. Ryan does some. Ryan Wilk does some. But we have.
I didn't know that, Stephen. Okay.
Yeah, we have a guy that all he does is EB-1As, NIWs. A couple guys. There are some groups out there where you can pay to get your profile built up, and I think there's a difference between a public relations company that like helps get you the right connection so you can get into there, and somebody who's going to, they pay for citations in journals. And I think there's a big difference between, hey, I don't know who does the Nobel Peace Prize, but if I hire someone, they might be able to introduce me, right? Like that's, I think, okay. I think there's a difference between I'm going to create a journal and then I'm going to get people to pay me to publish them in this journal, and then I'll pay other journals to cite my journal. I think that's the big difference. And, EB-1A is designed to be hard. I look back, there's an old Fifth Circuit case. Again, my friend that went to law school, who it doesn't do immigration, sent it to me years ago. And in the beginning of it, they talk about, it was an EB-1A lawsuit that got up to the Fifth Circuit, and the Fifth Circuit said, USCIS didn't make a mistake when they determined that this individual wasn't extraordinary, but that he was merely very good.
Really?
And like, there's a difference between being very good and being extraordinary for life, and certainly for immigration. Like, I think I'm good at what I do. I don't know if I'd be extraordinary. It's supposed to be the top 1%. So, my firm did a big YouTube thing on these. I would just be cautious about, some of these that I will tell you, I learned so much from the EB-1A subreddit about all
Yeah,
this.
this is a question. This is a post that's been making the rounds in that
Yeah,
subreddit as
the
well.
EB-1A
Yeah.
subreddit, like I went into it and started seeing all these things, and like, you know, people asking, and this is my situation, and I kind of got into like a rabbit hole. My boss is an American citizen. Rahul Reddy is a American citizen, and he contacted one of these companies, and they, you know, he paid them to see if he, you know, how this worked. And
Are you serious?
yeah, that's what he did. And they said, yeah, we could take, you know, we'll get you the stuff together.
No.
And that's kind of where like some of these might not be good. You know, so just be cautious.
That's actually a boss move. Super cool.
Yeah, like, I mean, he wanted to test it, like, because look, if there's a group out there that they're helping make the right introductions, and they say, you know what, you're not a good fit, and not okay. But if they're just taking everybody's money and then they'll pay to get your citations in, like, just be cautious. I think USCIS is going to be looking at, are these cases genuine? And the last thing you want, this is why I always tell people that the backlog sucks, and so many other things about immigration suck. The one way to make it worse is by lying. And, you know, if you get a fraud or misrepresentation finding, it's a permanent bar, and it's very hard to overcome, and that could be, you know, very, you know, bad for your life. And, you know, look, the backlog's got
a lot of these companies are done by folks who are not lawyers.
I've noticed that.
Yeah.
And again, I'm sure there are some good folks out there that can give you advice on building.
And I personally know a few as well.
Folks like, I'm sure.
When I see these NOIRs come in, I'm like, oh shit! So that means if you go through a firm and that firm's blacklisted, does that mean 5 years down the lane you get like a notice to revoke, intent to revoke?
You know,
really
review it.
Okay.
I don't know how much they are. I will say this: if you get the green card, rescinding a green card is very difficult, and requires a whole different line of questioning than revoking your I-140.
So if it's approved and you're still waiting for it and you've not gotten it yet, it's easier to revoke.
I think it's easier for the government to revoke. You know, they send a notice of intent to revoke, you respond.
It's an expensive $40K or $50K.
And I've learned more about rescissions of green cards than I ever wanted, because and it's a story for another time, but Brad and I are suing for 3 individuals who have approved green cards because they were approved when they weren't current and received notices of intent to rescind, which kind of throws everything into a loop. And we're trying to just get them back to the 40.
When does it end, Steven? Even if it's approved, you're still not safe. Oh my God.
They approved it and their priority date wasn't current. And one even did a motion to reopen, and the USCIS is like, no, it's okay. And then like they get a notice of intent to rescind in the mail. Their green card says, because again, they got it when they weren't current. That is not happening as much. I think in 2022, they like made a lot of mistakes.
That's crazy. But thanks for addressing that. This was not planned. I just saw it and I thought I'd talk about it. But
definitely.
The last question that we have is: there's a proposal from DHS to remove duration of status for international students. Is that in fruition? Like, what's the latest on that?
Interestingly, I saw an article today from NAF. I think it's NAFP. They're the is it NAFP? It's the International Students, NAFSA, excuse me, not NAFP. NAFSA, which works with a bunch of the DSOs and all. So like a DSO organization.
Okay.
I thought the regulation was at OMB for final review. Looks like it's going to be a proposed rule, so it will go through the notice and comment rulemaking. This is something the Trump administration tried in 2020. So throughout their whole time, I think they finally got towards movement in 2020. You know, F1s are very unique. They get a duration of stay. instead of a date certain on their I-94. And so
Yep.
theoretically, you can never be unlawfully present. Duration of status, excuse me.
Yep.
You can't be unlawfully present as long as you're maintaining classes and all that. And the Trump administration, I think, wants to cut that back, whether it's going to be, look, you get it for 4 years, 3 years, then you have to extend it, or God forbid it's like each year. We'll see what they put in the proposed regulation.
But they haven't put it out yet.
No, I haven't seen it. I looked again today and I haven't seen it yet.
So does that mean, oh man, so that means after your degree, if you're on like OPT and stuff, you got to like renew it potentially?
I think it could.
Man.
We'll see where they actually take it. I think it could be where, your I-20 lists a program end date. I think they'll match it up.
They do that. Oh, they match it up with that?
I think they could, yeah. And then maybe, you can apply early enough. We'll see. But it's going to...
So fun fact, Steven, depending on the country you applied from, your duration on your I-20, it varies. Because I was living in the Middle East at that time. So when I applied, I got exactly 30 months or 32 months.
Oh, gosh.
30 months. But folks, my friends who applied from India got like a blanket 5 years.
Yeah. So based off
of that.
Yeah, so it's based off of the visa reciprocity chart. Department of State, you can go look it up online.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Basically, it's the way the visa reciprocity chart was explained to me is what would I get as an American applying for a similar type of visa in that country.
Okay.
And so you can go up, if you Google visa reciprocity chart, it has like every country and every visa, and it'll tell you 36-month multi-entry, 12-month single entry. It'll tell you what they can issue for that state.
Gotcha.
Or for that country, excuse me.
That I've always wondered why it was so different, because it was a little difficult for me because I found it hard to go back because I had to apply for a fresh F1 visa and stuff like that. So I just waited till I got my H-1B and then I did it, as opposed to just renewing my F1 status. So now it's going to be even more difficult. Even if you have that 5 years or whatnot with your OPT, you probably are going to need to keep looking for visa slots and renewing your
absolutely obnoxious. But yeah, it is on their Department of State's website.
Oh, it's too soon to say what.
No, I don't have too many details. I mean, you can go look up what was in the 2020 regulation. I imagine it'd be very similar, but I haven't gone through all that quite yet to remind myself of that trauma.
Gotcha.
The first Trump administration.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I think on that note, Steven, it's been 1 hour and 15 minutes. I think it's a good place to stop. Thanks for doing this, man.
Yeah,
absolutely. I know it's hard, man, having a new baby in the house and stuff. Appreciate it.
I definitely love it.
Thank your wife for us too. I mean,
I will.
I appreciate the fact that you did this, and the reason I did ask you was, like I said, there's a lot of chaos and stress and panic, and if hearing you, I think might leave some of that stress and panic, and then people can focus on what's more important, which is making sure that the baby's healthy and the mother's healthy and stuff like that. So
yeah, I definitely hope so. One thing I always like to remind people is that what makes immigration law from the attorney perspective so interesting is that I have, what I do, and there are hundreds, dozens, whatever it is, other attorneys that are working on the same thing, and we're all on the same side. I know with the student visa litigation, there were attorneys everywhere, and it was constant emails each day. Hey, I just got this. Hey, I just got that. And so, we're all fighting a common enemy. And so I do appreciate that. So from my perspective, the people that are fighting the birthright citizenship case, with these nonprofits, I have a lot of faith in them. I think they're going to be doing a great job. They're probably better lawyers than I am, and I think they're going to get a very good result. Again, we're going to keep an eye on it, but I think everybody's going to be okay. But I get the stress. I mean, but take care of your man, take care of your wife first. It's tough, dude. That third trimester,
it is what it is.
Enjoy it most off. Don't stress about the immigration side, and like lose these moments. Like my daughter, like 6 weeks old over there, like who keeps me up half the night, like those moments where she's letting me love on her, like don't lose sight of that, just because of the immigration stuff. Like it'll work out.
Yep. Oh, it's good. I like that. Yeah, just don't lose sight of what's important at this point, right? I mean, if it has to happen, it will, and then we'll do our best to keep you guys posted on what's happening. And like I said, Steven's pretty regular on the podcast, so if it comes to it, we'll schedule something in the coming weeks.
Absolutely.
And then talk more about it. But thank you again, man.
Yeah,
I don't know how to thank you.
You
For everything, for all the support you've given the community group as well.
Join y'all's WhatsApp group. We'll chat on there.
Yeah. Steven's there. We've got a whole bunch of cool people there. So join us and check out Steven's Telegram group as well. And then we'll see you guys at the next podcast.
Yeah, thank you.
Take care, guys. Thank you. Stop recording.